once I read your book, and it was a very touching story, and I think it kind of forms uh, sort of a continuing thread through your book. And maybe I will ask you to unfold that a little bit, if you could, in a few minutes, if you don't want to go into too much detail, because it really gives a good context to some of the things that we've been talking about. One of the things that I had noticed, that there was, as you were saying, you were in medical school very young. You were at your year 5, which is pretty much the culmination of your studies. And then you had this clarity of connection that we're just speaking of, which was a different mode of knowing that made you just leave your studies and move to the United States from Israel. And then you're describing a 20-year process in which there were disappointments. But what I find very remarkable is that you seem to have used everything that took place for fueling your growth and bringing this message to us today and in your book. So that just is a very unique perspective, and that brought a certain kind of humility to me and gratitude as well.
What would you like me to talk about?
The first maybe just a few highlights, because you mentioned that, so it's just to bring into view the intensity of that, or the reality of those pivotal moments.
Well, why don't I want to say something about that big moment in my life when I decided to leave medical school and leave Israel and I'll go spend time with Andrew Cohen. So at that point, I had been a seeker for about 12 years, because I started my search when I was 16 or 17, when I realized that I didn't know the answers to the most important questions of life, such as who am I, what am I here for, and what is all this? And that as long as I didn't know the answers to these all-important questions, I was basically going along doing what everybody else does, but without really knowing if it's the right thing to do, if that's what I'm here for. So that really, these questions started my spiritual seeking and took me to taking books, participating in retreats, spending 2 years in a Zen monastery in Japan. And still I felt that all that did not really bring me any closer to the answers to those questions. So as the years went by, and when I was 29, a dozen years had gone by, I became more and more desperate about the fact that, well, I just spent 12 years without getting anywhere with those questions. I could easily spend another 70 years and die without getting what it's all about. And that would be a complete waste of my life. And that realization really made me quite desperate and feeling like something has to shift in me, or else I may well spend the rest of my life just being lost like everybody else, pretty much. So a few weeks after I met Andrew Cohen, and really everything that happened in my relationship with him at that point was because we had conversations about those questions and about spiritual practice and spiritual life and enlightenment, etc. And as a result of those conversations and whatever was transmitted from him to me, something started to shift in me. And at some point on the lawn of the hospital where I was going for classes, I had an experience or an event of non-dual or unitive consciousness. And for whatever brief moment, I don't know how long it took, but probably not more than a few seconds, I had a glimpse, or no, it was more than a glimpse. You know, when you have glimpse into that which is beyond time and space, time and space don't make any difference. So it was a full event of non-dual or unitive consciousness, as a result of which all my questions disappeared, evaporated, in the light of something that was way beyond the answer to those questions. It was much bigger than anything I could have imagined. And then when I came back to the world of time and space and relationships and Amir Freiman, pretty much immediately I thought, well, this, what just happened to me just now, could be another experience in the life, in the narrative of Amir Freiman's life. Or it could be the beginning of a completely new life. And what would make the difference between those two options would be the fullness of my response to what I have just experienced. And I decided, and that this is a kind of decision that doesn't happen, you know, it's not necessarily expressed in thoughts, but it's more expressed as an inner knowing or impulse. I decided to basically throw my entire weight on the possibility of this being the beginning of a new life. And so it was like, okay, what do I do in order to completely surrender, throw myself into that possibility? And so it was like, okay, so what do I have to give up? I can leave medical school, I can leave Israel, I can go and be with this teacher. It was like the most extreme response I could imagine in terms of my life and what I had planned for my life. And so I was looking for the most committed, serious, unreserved response to something which felt to me like an opportunity to make a complete shift in my life. So that's one, you know, way of looking at why I chose such a drastic or dramatic move.
Yes, no, thank you for walking us through that. And I as I read that, and I think there are other cases in your book as well from other seekers who have shared such profound experiences. And that, you know, earlier we were talking about that intuition, and another word that comes to mind is signs, where when such an experience comes, it's not from the mind, it's something that almost seems like it's being shown to you.
Right.
And at least from what I felt was, I probably would have done the same, you know, maybe it's too bold to say. I mean, as drastic as your decision was,
right.
It seems like you were honest with yourself.
Yes.